Movies of 1999. Well, hello everybody and welcome to the final episode 53 of the Movies of 1999, a podcast where we watch a movie from 1999 each week as selected by a bingo machine. My name is Jason Hutchins.
And I'm Craig Talbot.
And in this week's episode, we are going to be talking about the movie Being John Malkovich, movie number one that the bingo machine spat out last week. It kept the number one ball for the entire year and spat it out in the final week. And that was paired with Muppets From Space. Now, I normally say don't forget to stick around to the end of the episode, but you can forget about it this time because we're not going to be crossing live to a movie night, although I might play something else. But no more movie nights. We are actually recording this on the 4th of January 2025. It's a whole new year.
Yeah.
So, Craig, why do you think I selected the movie Being John Malkovich to be on my A list of movies?
I think you told me you thought it was the quintessential, I hope I'm quoting this correctly, quintessential 1999 movie.
It's the most 1999 movie there is, I think.
Well, it's a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes and 87% tomato meter or user score or whatever you want to like.
Popcorn
I'm
meter.
assuming you're going to tell me about how much you love Spike Jonze and what a wonderful director he is at least 5 times in the next prison.
Spike
half
Jones.
An hour or so.
Spike Jones.
Spike.
Yeah, he's only done like 4 movies, but they're all amazing. But anyway.
Right. And, okay, so only 4 times then. And it's written by Charlie Kaufman, who is no relation to Andy Kaufman. I did check that.
Good.
It interestingly had a budget of $13 million, box office of $23 million. It had 49 wins. And 79 nominations throughout the year.
Okay,
was nominated. Sorry.
There's a lot of facts, but I mean, really, I chose it because it's one of my favourite movies, right? And it's quintessentially 99.
Yeah.
But
it's certainly a very interesting movie.
Well, it's the genre that I really like, which is called magical realism. And then there's a lot of books that are in that genre, and this is a movie that's in that genre. And we might have had 1 or 2 other movies this year. You could have said The Green Mile was a magical realism movie, perhaps.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, this just takes it to the nth degree. And what's really impressive is how they start with this ridiculous concept and they just kind of explore it in every possible direction. And they sort of take it the entire way, which is really, and it's all set in a realistic universe. It's not like complete fantasy world. Anyway, why do you think that was paired with Muppets From Space? Nobody could understand why. But then in the first 10 seconds of the movie, everyone was like, oh.
Well, it was interesting because there was like a sequence where there was just some curtains and everyone went, oh, that's why. And
because the Muppet Show used to start with the curtains, didn't it?
Oh, we're starting with the curtains, yes. And then, of course, the puppets came out and then I went, oh. So I feel I'm superior to my friends because I actually got the real reason. But anyway, look, obviously there's puppets very central to John Malkovich, and obviously Muppets From Space is the puppets are very central to that.
Yeah, too, and he did work with the Jim Henson company for Where the Wild Things Are, I believe. So before we get too deep into the discussion, let's go over for the second last time to our mate ChatGPT, soon to be retiring, for its synopsis of Being John Malkovich.
Being John Malkovich is a darkly comedic, surreal tale about a struggling puppeteer named Craig Schwartz, played by John Cusack, who discovers a portal into the mind of actor John Malkovich. Through this portal, anyone can experience life as Malkovich for 15 minutes before being ejected onto the side of a New Jersey turnpike. Cameron Diaz stars as Craig's disillusioned wife, Lottie, whose life is upended by the portal, while Catherine Keener shines as Maxine, a seductive colleague who manipulates Craig and Lot's obsession with Malkovich for her own gain. Directed by Spike Jonze and written by Charlie Kaufman, the film explores themes of identity, desire, and control with bizarre humor and a brilliant performance by Malkovich as himself. Or rather, multiple versions of himself.
And Craig, I forgot to mention, we had a special guest. Drew was there in the flesh to watch this final movie of the year. He was visiting from Melbourne. Right. So, it was a really good movie night, wasn't it? We did things a little bit different.
Yes, we did.
Just to paint the picture, I set up 3 easels with every single movie printed out that we'd watched this year, all 52, from all 52 A-list movies. And everybody could put a red or a yellow sticker on 3 movies to say which ones were their favourite and which ones were their least favourite. And we'll talk about that a bit later on. But anyway, what did you think of being John Malkovich?
It was a bit unusual. It was unusual. As you say, it's this sort of magical realism sort of movie. I didn't mind it. I don't know that I would put it in my... I haven't actually rated it on Letterboxd yet, but I don't know that I would put it in my top 10, but it was interesting. I know, it was nominated for Golden Globes and for Oscars. So it was nominated for 3 Oscars. Best Director for Spike Jonze, Best Actress in a Supporting Role for Catherine Keener.
She was really
Charlie
good.
Kaufman were nominated for Best Writing. It actually didn't win any of those, which is interesting. It was also nominated for 4 Golden Globes, including Best Motion Picture, but again, all of these were in the year 2000, by the way. So it wasn't in the 1999 roundup. I did go and have a look and see what did actually, just because this is our last episode, I did want to have a look and see what was the ones that actually did win, and I've lost that now.
Okay, so...
there it is. So in 1999, American Beauty was the winner of Best Picture, and the nominees were Cider House Rules, The Green Mile, The Insider, and The Sixth Sense. In the year 2000, the movies were all movies that we haven't seen. Gladiator, Chocolat, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Erin Brockovich, and Traffic. So interesting that next year was a very different year in terms of the movies. Anyway, you were going to say something, sorry?
I was going to say, what was the name of John Cusack's character in this movie?
Craig, I think it was. Yeah, I know.
And what did his wife call him?
Oh, I can't remember.
Craigie.
Yeah. Did she? Oh, right. Yes.
I was laughing so much at that because you've been known by that name from time to time, haven't you?
Yes. Only my mother called me that. Thank you, Jason. So,
well, I thought that was quite...
My dearly departed mother.
I thought that was quite a coincidence that the final movie...
Yes, had someone called Craig in it.
Had someone called Craig in it, yeah. A lot of cameos in this movie as well.
There's a massive number of cameos.
When Brad Pitt popped up, that was quite funny, wasn't it? Like in the end sequence there.
There's Brad Pitt. I think there's Sean Penn as well. There's a whole bunch of different people.
David Fincher. David Fincher, the director of Fight Club, makes a cameo.
Yeah, Spike Jonze is in there as well as Derek Mantini's assistant. Mantini is the greatest puppeteer in history, and
Mantini.
So Brad Pitt's in there. Obviously, Sean Penn plays himself. David Fincher plays Christopher Bing. Winona Ryder, Andy Dick, and members of Hanson are in the audience of the Malkovich puppet show.
Oh, nice.
Apparently. John Malkovich was approached about this film several times and loved the script, but he and his production crew felt that another actor would fit the role better. Malkovich offered to help produce the film and aid Spike Jonze in any way, but refused to star in it. And eventually, after a couple of years, Malkovich's will was worn down and he agreed to star in the film. Originally, they wanted Christopher Walken, apparently.
Yeah, Christopher Walken, I could see that as well.
Being Christopher Walken.
Yeah. But Malkovich did such a good job of playing himself because that is such a weird acting assignment, isn't it?
He actually gets 2 credits. He gets the credit of being John Malkovich being John Malkovich, and he gets the credit of being John Horatio Malkovich as well, which is obviously that period when he's the puppeteer and
right.
He's being overtaken. So he gets 2 credits in the movie, 2 roles. He saw it as a role, but the whole movie as a role. So he felt that the only thing that he shared with the John Malkovich on the screen was his clothes. Everything else was not him.
But it is sort of filmed in a very realistic way, even though it's completely absurd. Like also the 7.5 floor, they kind of, they sell that as like a very mundane, everyday thing. This is how you get in. You use the, you press the emergency button on the lift and all of that sort of stuff. But
yes. The good old 7.5 floor. Foreshadowing for the Harry Potter series, which came out like a year later.
Yeah.
Or then the next year. Very. I mean, now we look at it and go, it's Harry Potter-esque, but yeah. And I think someone mentioned that.
All of the little film clips or the video that they show during the orientation where they have the reenactment and, the guy who has the little person as his wife and sort of refers to now your cursed kind will have a place they can call their own or something.
But interestingly, his wife doesn't remain with him. All those other people remain with him and live forever. His wife isn't there. So I thought that was interesting.
Of course, that is the Dr. Lester who keeps on going into different vessels for immortality.
So Roger Ebert gave this.
Sorry, I was also going to mention his assistant, that lady who can't hear properly. My name is. Your name is what?
That's a really interesting. Roger Ebert gave this 4 out of 4. This is his review. What an endlessly inventive movie this is. Charlie Kaufman, the writer of Being John Malkovich, supplies a stream of dazzling inventions, twists, and wicked paradoxes. And the director, Spike Jonze, doesn't pounce on each one like fresh prey, but unveils it as if there's more where that came from. Rare is the movie where the last half hour surprises you as much as the first. The movie has enough ideas for half a dozen films, but Jonze and his class handle them so surely will never feel hard-pressed. And the rest of his review is quite good, but in the last paragraph he says, every once in a long while, a movie comes along like no other, a movie that creates a new world for us and uses it to produce wonderful things. And he goes on to mention some of those movies like Forrest Gump, MASH, This Is Time to Tap, Babe, interesting. And what do these films have in common? Absolutely nothing, and that's the point. It's just like he talks about the imagination. He thinks that this should have got nominated for Best Picture, and he thinks the Academy need portals into their brains if they don't, but they didn't. So I did look that up. Yes, the overall critics' view of Being John Malkovich is that it's smart, funny, highly original, and supports its wild premise with skillful direction and a stellar ensemble cast.
And David and Margaret on the movie show, David called it the best film of the year.
Right.
And gave it a perfect score as well.
Right, interesting. Yeah, obviously loved by the critics. I just found it a little bit too off the wall, probably for my own personal taste. But I was very impressed by the puppeteering, so I did look up who those
was amazing,
people
wasn't
were.
it? That sequence at the beginning. And then, of course, John Malkovich reenacts it halfway through the movie.
Yeah. The puppets were created by Camila Portuguese Robbins. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but I tried. And Images in Motion. And Philip Hugh Burr animated the puppets. About Hugh Burr's puppetry, Johns has said that he was a full-time puppeteer and he controlled his puppets with impressive means, such as using strings and no rods, as well as swinging the puppets on high wires. I think the puppeteering in this movie is quite remarkable.
And it's filmed really well, too.
Yeah. Yes. Quite remarkable puppeteering. The skill of the puppeteer is quite amazing. Yes. So I did mention that. Sorry, go on.
Well, we also didn't really mention Cameron Diaz. She was unrecognisable, wasn't she? With her frizzy hair.
I think she was very good in this movie.
Oh, she's amazing.
I think it's probably her best role that I've seen her in, actually, to be honest.
And Catherine Keener, they sort of say those two actors were cast against type. So Catherine Keener was like the sexy, girl in the office, and Cameron Diaz was like the dowdy wife. And normally you'd expect them to be in the opposite roles, I guess.
Yes. I thought John Cusack, I don't know whether it's just because he was an unlikable character, but I wasn't completely convinced by his acting in this movie.
I thought his performance was great. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently he asked his his agent for the most ridiculous and unbelievable script you can find.
Yeah. Well,
that's
he got
the one
it.
I want to be in.
Yeah, quite amazing. We all laughed when it was revealed that John Malkovich was 44 years old, because he looked a lot older than that. He looked quite overweight and everything. But he was actually only 45 in real life.
Oh, is that right? So they dropped a year off him.
When they filmed it, yeah. So, yeah, it was interesting because we sort of all assumed that he was older than we are, but he's not.
Yeah. Charlie Kaufman apparently had no backup actors in mind to play the title role if John Malkovich couldn't appear in the film. And every time somebody offered to produce the film on the condition that a different actor be used, Kaufman adamantly refused, even when Malkovich himself made the offer. Like Malkovich said, well, you should get this guy or whatever I'm assuming that means.
Malkovich did suggest that they get, what's his name, as his best friend? Charlie Sheen.
Oh, Charlie Sheen.
Yeah. And
I mean, there's a good cameo by Charlie Sheen.
And that's so funny. That's so funny because, the idea that they are like best buddies and hanging out and sort of growing old together. And it's quite funny.
Yeah. I mean, they're very different. Well,
they
come across as very different people on screen. Maybe they are good friends. I don't know. Apparently, the original script had Kevin Bacon in place of Charlie Sheen. But John Malkovich actually recommended Sheen for the part, as you said. So, in a radio interview, Charlie Kaufman explained that while pitching John Malkovich representatives of the story, Kaufman was informed by them, much to his surprise. Malkovich lived at the time in an apartment numbered 7.5. Kaufman said his representatives gave the impression of filling him out and was worried if he was a bit of a stalker. So, there you go. I suppose it does probably seem a bit like that when you get a script like that. I mean, it's a very odd script. It's probably
it's amazing. It's like, but again, I really like the idea of taking an absurd premise and just rolling with it and exploring it to in every direction.
Yeah.
So Spike Jonze, we've already seen this year in Three Kings, where he was one of the actors. His partner at the time was Sofia Coppola, who made The Virgin Suicides. So they were pretty busy this year. Spike Jonze has directed a lot of skate videos and a lot of music videos. So he did music videos for The Breeders, Beastie Boys, Weezer, R.E.M., Björk, Daft Punk, Chemical Brothers, Fatboy Slim, a whole bunch of people, Beck, Tenacious D. So it's worth seeing some of his videos. He's made some of the most classic music videos, I think. The Praise You one for Fatboy Slim is quite famous, but also Weezer's. And like I said, he's only made 4 movies. So 3 movies after this, Adaptation, which again is amazing. It's a Charlie Kaufman script. It's about the struggle to adapt a book for the screen, but it goes completely off the rails. But in that movie, they recreate some of the behind-the-scenes footage of making this movie.
Oh, okay.
So if you see Adaptation, the characters in Adaptation are Charlie Kaufman. He's a character. Yeah. And they show him going onto the set of being John Malkovich and they sort of recreated that. So that's an interesting movie to watch as a follow-up.
Yeah. I've got a couple of little things about that, but Cameron Diaz's makeup artist, Gucci Westman, described styling her in the role as a challenge to make her look homely. And so when Diaz took the role, she didn't know that people weren't going to recognise her. I mean, I struggled to recognise her for about half the movie. It took me about half the movie to realise who it was.
Yeah. If you didn't know she was in it, you probably would miss it entirely.
Yeah. It's apparently John Malkovich wanted Spike Jonze and Charlie Kaufman to heighten the satire in the movie, like make it more so. In one of the scenes, Charlie Sheen is in a commercial, Charlie Sheen is seen driving a car with a license plate M.A. Sheen. And this is a reference to the scene in which Malkovich and Charlie Sheen. Yeah, Machine. Yeah, trade affectionate nicknames. Malkovich is Machine and Charlie is Malcatraz, apparently. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they are friends in real life. They could well be. I mean, Charlie Sheen had a very mixed life, didn't he? He was a bit of a rake, shall we say.
Yeah. I think he might have been coming out of rehab just to make this movie almost. I saw something written about that. My favourite band, They Might Be Giants. We heard about them last week with Austin Powers because they wrote the soundtrack. Apparently one of their songs, one of their older songs, Put Your Hand Inside the Puppet Head, was meant to be played over the closing credits.
Oh, really?
But for some reason it wasn't. But, nice to know that Kaufman and Spike Jonze fans of They Might Be Giants. Anyway.
There you go. I was going to avoid that particular factoid, but you got it.
I know you were.
So apparently this is Spike Jonze's directorial film debut. I didn't realise it was his debut. So
amazing to make a first movie like this, isn't it? Like, obviously he'd made a lot of music videos and a lot of short clips and stuff, but yeah. Anyway, and Orson Bean is also very good in the role of Dr. Lester, I think. He's perfectly cast for that. So good. I really enjoyed watching this one, and I think it was a bit of a favourite of everyone who was at the movie night as well. So it was a good way of ending the year. But for now...
Yeah, I think it was very popular on the movie night. Like I said, I didn't mind the film, but I don't know that I would put it in my list of all-time favourites.
I had a little craft table set up and everyone made themselves John Malkovich masks, except there was one person who held out and decided not to participate. Craigie over here thought it was all a bit silly. So I've got a photograph where everyone's got a mask on except for you, including the dog.
Well,
but
I like being different. Anyway, seeing as this is the last thing, I think this is a very important factoid that I need to give you, Jason.
Okay.
This is the most critical one. Well, there's two actually. One is that it's included in the 1001 movies you must see before you die by Steven Schneider. The other is that this film is part of the Criterion Collection. And Jason, don't forget to write this down. It's spine number 611.
Oh, thank you.
I just wanted to make sure.
I've completed my little book of Criterion Collection numbers that I was filling out this year. And now I'll get a gold star for that. So there you go. Apparently some people think that the Jordan Peele movie from 2017, Get Out, is a sequel to Being John Malkovich. Yeah, and I think Catherine Keener is in both of those movies. So there's and Bradley Whitford from The West Wing is in Get Out as well. So that's an interesting one to watch as a B movie pairing, perhaps if you want to go down that rabbit hole. But there's a whole fan theory to tie those two movies together.
I mean, I did think that whole idea of John Malkovich being inside John Malkovich's head was a bit of an interesting one. That's
what I'm saying. They explored all of the different nooks and crannies of the idea. So obviously one of the ideas is what would happen if John Malkovich went into the portal. So and that's where us all wearing the mask comes from. And saying Malkovich.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? The play that Craig was performing with his puppets when he gets smacked in the head by an angry parent is based on the letters of Al Ballard and Heloise.
Yes.
I have to include this one for the classicists in our audience.
These erotic letters and he's sort of performing out on the streets of New York and a little girl stops to watch.
Apparently they were written between 1115 and 1117 AD and were found, copied and abridged by Johannes de Vepria, a 15th century Cistercian monk. And there's a Latin name, ex epistolis jurum amantium, from the letters of two lovers, and it became a classic document of early romantic or tragic love used by many artists in their work, including William Shakespeare in Romeo and Juliet, and of course it's also in Charlie Kaufman's later project, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and a few other movies as well, apparently. But there you go. There's a callback to Romeo and Juliet there.
Yeah, very interesting.
I thought you'd like that one.
So, yes, you got a final fact for us?
Only that Charlie Kaufman sent the screenplay to Francis Ford Coppola after he wrote it. Coppola liked it very much and showed it to his daughter's husband, Spike Jonze, I guess. And then Jones liked the screenplay so much that he approached Kaufman about directing the movie. So, yeah, that's how the
link happened. Yeah, very good. So, on that note, I can hear the approaching sounds for the final time of this week's. Yes.
All right, this week I did promise everyone a double feature for this one, but in the end, one of the movies was so bad that I couldn't be bothered sitting all the way through it. Anyway, so there were two movies on the F list this week. Welcome to the intermission, everyone. Sorry. And so we're going to talk about the movie Double Jeopardy. We were also going to talk about a movie called Eye of the Beholder, but I think less said about that particular movie, the better, because it's definitely a bit weird and only got a 9% on the old Rotten Tomatoes. But actually, I was quite impressed with Double Jeopardy. Now, Double Jeopardy is only got a 28% score on Rotten Tomatoes and 61% on user score. I think it's a little bit unfair. I actually was quite impressed with this movie, to be honest. Reasonably impressed. Anyway, it's directed by Bruce Beresford, and it's Ashley Judd is the main star, and she's also the main star in Eye of the Beholder, in case you're wondering why I'm talking about that. So this is going to be an Ashley Judd double feature. And interestingly, in both movies, she's a murderer. So, or in this movie anyway, she's supposed to be a murderer. So Double Jeopardy is a 1999 American crime adventure film directed by Bruce Beresford. It's got Tommy Lee Jones and Bruce Greenwood in it as well. It follows the Libby Parsons, who is wrongfully convicted of her husband Nick's murder. After discovering that Nick faked his death and framed her, Libby learns that she cannot be tried for the same crime twice due to the Double Jeopardy clause in the US Constitution. I don't know if we have that in Australia or not. I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
Once paroled, she sets out to find Nick and their son, Maddie, while being pursued by her parole officer, Travis Lehman, who is played by Tommy Lee Jones. Now, it very much got mixed reviews from the critics. Roger Ebert only gave it 2.5 stars. And as I've mentioned, on Rotten Tomatoes, it only has an approval rating of 28%. It was considered to be somewhat unremarkable. Now, I do need to mention, though, that a lot of Roger Ebert's complaints about this particular movie was that in the advertising for the movie, a lot of the plot was given away. So in the trailers and the advertising for the movie, they gave away most of the plot.
They used to do that
a lot. It's a bit hard to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to watch it. So he was quite grumpy about that in his review.
Right.
Now, I didn't know the plot beforehand, so I knew about the Double Jeopardy thing, but I didn't know much else.
I am surprised that a movie reviewer like Roger Ebert would watch the trailer before watching the movie.
He didn't watch the trailer. He said he was actually sent the details in an email. So, like in the sort of thing, he's like, he literally says something along the lines of, some jerk sent me the details of this movie in an email.
Right.
And it's like, so he was quite grumpy about that. Now, I'm assuming it was one of the advertising or marketing executives to do with the movie. It did, mind you, still manage to gross $177 million worldwide on a budget of $40 million. I actually didn't mind it. I don't think it's a classic movie or a brilliant movie, but I didn't actually mind it. I didn't think it was absolutely awful. I can understand if you already knew a lot of the aspects of the plot. I think Ashley Judd actually does a reasonable job as the main star. Tommy Lee Jones is very good, as Tommy Lee Jones always is. There's some really nice locations in the movie. I actually didn't mind it too much. I don't think it's not in my top 10. I would probably give it maybe 2.5 or 3 out of 5, but it was a commercial success. So I don't think a terrible movie to end the series on. Eye the Beholder, on the other hand, is very, very weird, and I struggled to get through it. It's very odd and only got 9% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
The bit that I did watch was quite odd. There was talk about magical realism. There was a bit of that in that movie as well. So,
right.
Because he keeps seeing his daughter all the time, even though she's not actually there.
Right.
I had forgotten what a terrible actor Ewan McGregor can be. I think he probably has a reputation as an actor above his ability. But anyway.
I don't know about that. Ewan McGregor can be good.
I think he can be, but I think there's a lot of movies where he's not. So, yeah.
Well, that's probably just not choosing very good movies to be in, perhaps.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I think you just chose this. I think you just chose this because one of our favourite games was Eye of the Beholder back in the day.
Yes, Eye of the Beholder was definitely one of my favourite games. I liked the name. But they're both Ashley Judd movies. They're, like I said, I won't talk too much about Eye of the Beholder, but I thought Double Jeopardy was a reasonable movie. I thought of the thrillers that we've watched this year, I thought it was not too bad. But anyway, yeah, that's the final intermission.
So there you go, the final intermission. And since you were talking about the F list, I mean, there's a whole bunch of movies that are on the F list, and there's a whole bunch of movies that are 99 movies that we didn't watch at all. And I think I'm probably going to want to watch a few of those over this coming year. So some examples are Jawbreaker. A lot of people, Jawbreaker's a bit of a cult classic apparently. Cruel Intentions. Everyone mentions that Cruel Intentions should have been on my A list.
Yeah, I was surprised by that one.
And I think Breakfast of Champions, because I do like Kurt Vonnegut, and that's a movie about it's a Kurt Vonnegut book that I didn't even know that they made that movie, so I want to watch that one. The Astronaut's Wife, I thought looked interesting. And of course there's movies like Meet Joe Black. Man of the Century was an interesting one. That's a guy from the 1920s that somehow teleports to the modern day, so similar to some of the other movies that we've seen. Jacob the Liar, which is the Robin Williams one about the Holocaust.
Right.
So that, like,
there's another movie called Message in a Bottle, which I feel like I've heard a bit. Anna and the King.
Yep.
She's All That.
She's All That, yeah. There's The Red Violin with Sam Jackson. So Angela's
Lake
Ashes,
Placid,
The War Zone.
There's
Tea with Mussolini.
The Bachelor.
The End of the Affair.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. There is a lot.
There is an enormous number of movies that we haven't watched that are especially good when you get down towards the bottom of the. I've got a list here sorted by how much money they made.
Right.
And we've watched the top 14, but number 15 was End of Days.
Right, yes.
And number 18 was Double Jeopardy. Number 19 was The Haunting. Number 20, well, I've seen that one, the number 22, the Pokemon movie. And then there's The Bone Collector, General's Daughter, and Inspector Gadget in the 20s.
So, yeah, it just shows you how many movies are released every year.
Ridiculous.
And so many of these movies disappear. And that's part of the reason for doing this project, because a lot of these movies you can't even get on streaming services very easily. You've either got to rent them or download them illegally or buy the DVD,
I was just going to mention, there's a movie that I've heard of, I don't know very much about, but I've heard that it wasn't too bad. It's a movie called Tea with Mussolini.
That's right, yes.
Which I don't know a massive amount, but I feel like I've heard of that.
Yeah.
As being quite a good movie.
Yep. Yeah, it would have been on SBS quite a few times, I would think.
Yeah, and I mean also that Buena Vista Social Club, which you explained last week.
It's a doco, isn't it? Yeah, so I didn't put any.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
The truth is, American movie is also a doco. So I mean, I break my own rules all the time. Anyway, let's go over now to ChatGPT for its synopsis of Muppets from Space.
Muppets from Space takes the lovable chaos of Jim Henson's creations into new territory, outer space. This comedic adventure centers on Gonzo, who embarks on a quest to uncover his origins after receiving mysterious messages that suggest he's an alien. Joined by Kermit, Miss Piggy, and the rest of the Muppet gang, Gonzo faces off against a shady government agent, played by Jeffrey Tambor, determined to exploit his extraterrestrial connection. While far more lighthearted than Being John Malkovich, both films explore themes of identity and self-discovery, albeit with vastly different tones. One dives into existentialism and puppetry for adults, while the other celebrates friendship and belonging with classic Muppet whimsy.
And Craig, what did you think of this movie?
Well, my son thanks you for this movie, Jason. This is the first movie that we actually sat down as a family and watched together.
Oh, what a nice way to end the year, yes.
Yeah, it was actually quite nice. So my wife, my son, and I all sat and watched this together. I quite like this movie. I don't think it's the best Muppets movie.
No.
I'm a bit of a Muppets expert in our household because my son is obsessed. I should explain, my son has Down syndrome and he does go through various different obsessions, and the Muppets are one of those things that he absolutely loves.
What a great thing to be obsessed with. I love the Muppets as well.
Yeah, he's totally obsessed with the Muppets. We actually watched some episodes of the Muppets because they're on Disney as well on either side of this movie while we were waiting for people to do various different things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Jim Henson was a genius, wasn't he? Muppets and Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, the movies, the Dark Crystal and all that sort of stuff.
I mean, he's not directly involved with this
he had died.
movie, but,
he died in 1990, I think.
But look, it's not a great Jim Henson movie. Muppets in Space movie, but it's not a terrible one.
In some way, it reminded me of Austin Powers, the comment that you made about Austin Powers, which is like it's a series of skits. Like it seems like the story wasn't too deep in this movie. It's basically just Gonzo who turns out to be an alien, and then the aliens arrive and they sing a big song, and then the movie's over. But it's like all these different jokes, and a lot of them are visual jokes or wordplay jokes, but it's just like a whole string of those. I thought it was weird because this is very much a kids' movie, I would say. It's made for a younger audience.
Oh, yeah. It definitely is.
But right at the beginning, Gonzo says, I had a weird dream. You know, he has this dream about being refused entry onto Noah's Ark. And I think Noah is played by F. Murray Abraham, who's in The White Lotus and Amadeus and so forth. But he wakes up and says, I had a weird dream, and I think it's the prawn character. What's his name? I thought he was Pepe the prawn. I thought he was the funniest character. But he says, was it the one with the goat and the dwarf and the jar of peanut butter? Now, that's a bit of a...
That sounds a bit racy, yeah.
That sounds a bit racy for a kids' movie. So, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, and Pepe keeps going off on these weird tangents. I think Pepe's in there to keep the adults amused.
Yeah, because he has this accent.
Going off on these silly tangents. Yeah. But, look, I did like this movie. So one of the critics' sort of views is that if Muppets from Space lacks the magic and wit of its cinematic predecessors, it's still a pleasingly silly space romp, and it's funny and clever enough to make for better than average family entertainment. Look, there are some absolutely classic Muppet movies out there, which my son can tell you all about because he's probably watched every single one of them, and I've had to watch quite a few of them too with him. This one was actually directed by Tim Hill and was produced by Brian Henson and Martin G. Baker. This is the last movie that Frank Oz is involved with in the Muppets series. This is the last movie for quite some time. So the next one wasn't for another 12 years. So Frank Oz retired effectively from the Muppets after this movie. And there's quite a long list of Andy McDowell, of course. Ray Liotta is in this movie.
Yeah, yeah.
David Arquette.
It is interesting to see all the cameos in this movie as well, because there's also a Dawson's Creek cameo, which was really weird.
There's Katie Holmes is in this one.
Where she's in character as if she's in Dawson's Creek.
Yeah, apparently the production studio for Dawson's Creek was next door or something, so they popped in. But
Francois kept on doing Star Wars and kept on directing after this. It was just that he retired from voicing the Muppets.
The actual puppeteering. Yeah, and the voice. Yeah. Yeah, so interestingly, in the DVD commentary, which includes a handful of the Muppets in character, Kermit the Frog says he's walking away to go to the snack bar and doesn't come back until just as the movie is ending. He claims that he was delayed by walking back into the wrong DVD commentary, that of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. That movie and this both feature the voiceover of Frank Oz, obviously.
But did Kermit actually show up in the commentary for Star Wars? Because that would be the icing on the cake or the cherry on top.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Well,
I'm sorry. I didn't know that. But apparently, obviously now Disney owns both the Muppets and the Star Wars films, so they're fairly. Though this one, Muppets in Space, is not on Disney Plus. I had to obtain this by other means. It's actually on Internet Movie Archive, though.
Muppets From Space, Craig, I have to agree.
Sorry, yes, I kept saying that. Muppets From Space.
Yeah, because they don't go to space. They just, space comes to them. There are a lot of movie references. So the whole, like the whole spaceship arriving and things like that, there's a lot of movie references.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind sort of
thing. But when the actual pod comes down, it's like egg-shaped, and they comment, and I think Pepe says maybe it's got chocolate in it or something. But I thought that was quite funny because Dr. Evil last week had an egg-shaped escape pod as well, and I'm like, are they referencing that?
Yeah, maybe they were. Yeah, so Hulk Hogan makes an appearance in this movie as well.
Hollywood Hulk Hogan, yes.
Hollywood Hulk Hogan, that's right. He brags about turning, they say heel here, so heel being the bad guy. Hogan was best known for playing a kid-friendly good guy, usually in the TV wrestling sort of thing. But at the time, he was actually wrestling as a bad guy for World Championship Wrestling, and he often performed as the villainous New World Order leader, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, which is what he's doing here.
Yeah, and he's continued to be a villain to this day, going completely right-wing MAGA. Yes. So we talked about TMBG in the previous movie. And for this movie, Ween, another band that I like, that wrote a song. They were actually commissioned to write a song for this movie that wasn't used.
Oh, right.
Because they actually decided, instead of having original music, they'd have this funk soundtrack. And
Yes.
So why?
This is the first Muppets movie that didn't have its own sound. Like, wasn't a musical, like all of the other movies. So I think that's where it lacks a little bit of its own magic. It didn't have its own unique soundtrack, and it didn't have the music. So it's not a musical film with original music.
I really would have liked Gonzo sitting on the roof of the house singing a Ween song. That would have been great. Okay. But instead it was all this old funk music from the 70s or something.
This is a nice little factoid, though sad one. Bab the Sheep was voiced by the 11-year-old Christina Donnelly, who got the opportunity through the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And she was given a choice between acting in the Muppet film or voicing a puppet of her own, and she chose the puppet. And near the end of her time filming, Steve Whitmire and David Goltz, both of whom are producers or puppeteers or something, presented her with a special edition of the Hensonville News Observer and a bag full of the Muppets merchandise. She also kept the puppet that she voiced. After the filming was completed, unfortunately, Christina Donnelly died from Ewing's sarcoma on November the 7th, 1999, sadly. But, yeah, that's quite a nice thing for them to have done. That's a pretty amazing Make-A-Wish. Yeah. As you said, Katie Holmes and Josh Jackson had cameos because of Dawson's Creek. And interestingly, F. Murray Abraham was in a movie called Noah's Ark, also from 1999, which I've never heard of.
Okay.
Don't know, but he played a different character in that particular movie. And also, apparently, Katie Holmes and Josh Jackson are among the crowd awaiting the spaceship landing. Interestingly, there's a lot of stuff about people who gave people lifts. There's a lot of cameos because people gave the Muppets lifts and things like that.
What do you mean they gave them lifts?
Well, like in cars and things like that,
And you give a Muppet a lift? You put it in a bag or a suitcase? What are you talking about? They gave him a lift.
So,
They're not real,
Baker and the scientist got a lift from somebody.
Oh, you mean, right, they filmed them, like part of the movie is them hopping into a car. I don't remember that. Yeah.
So Baker, because remember Baker and the scientist got left behind. So they got a lift with somebody who was famous. I wasn't going to go into all the details. And, yeah.
He's not called the scientist. He's called Bunsen, I believe.
Bunsen, sorry, yeah.
He's quite funny because he doesn't have any eyes, and he's the one character that they constantly show, wiping his eyes and things like that.
Yeah, Baker is the star, though.
Baker's always good.
Anyway, yeah. Bunsen Honeydew is his full name. I apologise.
Well, it makes sense. Yes. I guess his head is a honeydew, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right, honeydew melon. Yeah. It's the last Muppets film to be rated G by the MPAA, so the others must have been
they took a dark
PG
turn after
for some reason. Apparently they did. I didn't know that. Yeah. There's a reference to Independence Day from 1996 in this movie. Dr. Van Nuter slams against the glass window while being wrapped in electricity wire tubing.
Because there was a reference in the movie we saw last week as well. They showed the White House getting blown up. That was from Independence Day.
Apparently, the mashed potato sculpture that was on the lawn at one point is a reference to Close Encounters. Yeah. Which is fair enough, I guess. It was the last Muppet film to be released on Laserdisc.
Well,
so the end of the Laserdisc.
A sad moment for all those Laserdisc owners.
There were. Back in the day when I was working at Brash's in 1996, there were a lot of people who collected Laserdiscs at the time. They were actually quite big because this is like 3 or 4 years before DVD. They weren't big, but there was a dedicated.
They were physically big.
Follow. They were physically huge, but there was a dedicated following for Laserdisc for quite a long time. But a small but dedicated. I mean, they were very expensive. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's just about it for factoids. So why don't we now talk about the year that has gone and the movie night? So I want to mention the movie night. So we, like I said at the beginning, we put up all the movies I printed out the movie posters for all the movies, and everyone who attended the movie night got 3 red dots that they could place on their favourite 3 movies and 3 yellow dots to place on the worst 3 movies from the year. And the top movie out of all of that was The Sixth Sense. So that's the audience favourite, but a close runner-up. So The Sixth Sense got 5 red dots. The runner-up was Gods and Monsters, so we've commented on that quite a lot. And then after that, there were 8 different movies that had 2 red dots, and then a bunch of movies with 1 red dot. The most controversial movie was Magnolia, that got 2 red and 3 yellow. So that jibes with some of the comments that we've had as well. And the worst movies, the winner of the worst movie, surprisingly, because for me it was the second one, but South Park got 5 yellow dots. So that was the worst movie of the year. Second worst was Affliction. So that's definitely the one. And I was having a look at a book by David Stratton during the week from the movie show. He wrote a book called 101 Movies You Might Have Missed. And it's all in alphabetical order. And number 1 is Affliction. So he gives a really good review to Affliction, but it was such a depressing movie that nobody enjoyed watching it. But that got 4 yellow dots. And then there was a tie for third place. So Twin Falls, Idaho got 3 yellow dots. And I believe you might have put a red dot on that one, Craig. Twin Falls, Idaho, did you?
No, I mean, I liked that movie, but yeah, I was surprised that a lot of people didn't.
And The Thin Red Line got 3 yellow dots as well. So that's another movie that both of us liked, but some people didn't like it all. We also had a quiz, and you were the winner of the quiz, Craig. You got an 8 out of 10? Or
I don't think there's any huge surprise to that, given my amount of time I've spent reading factoids, but yeah.
So congratulations there. But during that, we asked for people to call out their hidden gems. And the hidden gems that people mentioned were Go, Straight Story. Now, I forgot to mention, in Muppets From Space, there's a Straight Story reference. I'm not sure if it's deliberate, but Gonzo gets to the TV studio on a ride-on lawnmower.
Oh, that's right, he does, yes.
So, yeah, that was quite interesting. So Go, Straight Story, Titus, which was definitely a hidden gem. Nobody had heard of that before, but it's pretty good. October Sky, American Movie, Cookie's Fortune, and Twin Falls, Idaho. So maybe that's where you mentioned it as a hidden gem. So there you go. And right at the end of that, Dana and Will were having a chat, and each of them picked about 15 movies from our list of 52 that they watched for the first time this year and that they thought were really good movies, like they were glad to have watched them. So I think that that's where this project has really been successful. It sort of took these obscure movies and gave us a chance to appreciate them. So there you go.
I think I probably watched about 100 movies that I hadn't seen before at least. So anyway, I had a look at what my top rated movies were. Now, I haven't rated it probably last 4 or 5 because I just haven't got around to it.
You could do it now, couldn't you?
I probably could, but I don't think it would change the list a great deal.
Right.
So interestingly, and I was actually surprised by this, I've actually put Thin Red Line as my first highest rated movie.
So what did you give The Thin Red Line?
5 stars on Letterboxd.
Okay.
The Matrix I also gave 5 stars. Postman in the Mountains, which was one I watched for the intermission. The Green Mile. 10 Things I Hate About You. Probably one of my surprises of the year, also with 5 stars, is October Sky, and then The Sixth Sense. And I watched The Matrix twice this year, so I've actually got it with 5 stars twice. So The Insider I gave 5 stars, and much to Drew's annoyance, but I'm going to say this anyway, is Arlington Road and Gods and Monsters.
With 5 stars, Arlington Road.
Yeah, I did at the time. Straight Story was also the last of my 5-star movies.
How many 5-star movies did you have in total?
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Have you sorted by rating?
4.
It doesn't sound like you have.
5, 6, 7, 8,
Okay.
9, 10.
Wow.
11.
11, that's
it's a
pretty
little bit
good.
complicated because there were some other movies I watched this year I also gave 5 stars to, but they're not in the 1999 series.
Right. Yeah, I have a separate list of just the movies that we've watched, and I gave 7 5 stars, and they are Gods and Monsters, Magnolia, The Sixth Sense, The Matrix, Fight Club, Pi, and Being John Malkovich. So they are my 5-star movies.
I don't think Being John Malkovich would probably be a 4 out of 5 for me, I guess. Girl Interrupted I gave 4.5, along with The Colour of Paradise and Ghost Dog and Ideal Husband and a few other things. Blair Witch Project as well.
Yeah.
And a Princess Mononoke I gave 4.5 stars too, all the way back.
No, I gave 5.
All the way back,
I gave 5 to that, but I didn't really count it. I have 14 movies that I gave 4.5 stars. So 7 I gave 5 and 14 I gave 4.5.
Gosh.
Which is quite a lot. But then I've got a lot of movies that are way lower than that, including The Mummy, famously, my 2-star movie, much to the annoyance of all my work colleagues. But movies like Summer of Sam, Muppets from Space.
Oh, really? Oh, dear.
Runaway Bride, Mickey Blue Eyes. What else have we got? American Pie, Deep Blue Sea. Yeah, these are all my...
I won't upset you too much, so I'll only tell you my 1-star movies.
Okay.
My 1-star movies, I have 3. which is Magnolia, Existence, and Summer of Sam.
Well, I have three
Obviously,
as well.
we disagree about those, but yes.
My three are Crazy in Alabama, Mickey Blue Eyes, and Runaway Bride.
Yeah, I think I might have given Crazy Alabama 2.
Wow.
And I don't remember. I apparently watched a movie called Mystery Men, but I don't remember. And that's from 1999.
Yeah. That was the one that was paired with Galaxy Quest. It's like a similar superhero fast movie.
I clearly don't remember that one at all. Yeah, there's a lot of 2-star and 2.5-star movies.
Yeah. I think my most perplexing movie is Existence. I'm really perplexed at how much you disliked that. But there you go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Probably, I don't know. Look, we watched a lot of movies this year. I really, really liked a lot of the ones I watched for the intermission. I was really pleasantly surprised by a lot of those. So I really appreciate being able to do the intermission. I actually discovered some really interesting stuff this year in book form as well as TV series. And my God, I've watched a lot of TV series as well, which are not included in any of this. And all of that stuff. So for me, the intermission, some of that stuff was really, really great. Like some really great movies from that list.
Well, I really enjoyed the whole process. Running the movie night every week was a lot of effort. Well, it took a lot of time. I reckon I was spending about 10 hours a week on watching movies, running the movie night, recording this podcast, editing it, and all that sort of stuff.
I think I averaged probably about the same amount of time just in terms of researching, watching movies, doing intermission stuff. It's soaked up a lot of time. I would say about 10 hours a week easily.
So we're getting some time back this year, but I really enjoyed having a list of movies to work through, because one of the things that's so difficult with all these streaming services is finding something to watch, and just having this list where we had to watch a movie. When the number came out of the bingo machine, even if you didn't want to watch it, we still sat down and watched it.
Yes.
We weren't
there was quite a few.
We went sort of surfing through Netflix. We went surfing through Netflix looking for something to watch. It's just we listened to the bingo machine. So I found that interesting.
My top movie, The Thin Red Line, I wouldn't have even known about that movie if I hadn't done this. Yeah. So obviously Postman in the Mountains is a intermission one, but again, I would have never have heard about that movie if I hadn't gone looking for it, and I was glad to watch that. Probably October Sky. Look, The Sixth Sense I had heard of, but I'd never actually sat down and watched it. The Insider I'd never heard of. Arlington Road I'd never heard of. Gods and Monsters I had heard of, and I really enjoyed that. But that was probably my most unexpected, top movie of the year. I wouldn't have suspected that to have affected me as much. The Straight Story, again, another movie I hadn't heard of. That was really, really excellent.
Such a low-key movie, isn't it? And
Boys Don't Cry, I've given that 4.5 stars. Yeah. I think I dropped half a star just simply because it was so difficult to watch. But I put that as one of my best movies of the year at the movie night. Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai.
Oh, so great.
Definitely would never have watched that.
But that hit so differently to when I was 25 years ago. Yeah. Because the slow pace just worked so well in retrospect.
Yes. Girl Interrupted, another movie I probably wouldn't have watched without.
I rediscovered that. I didn't realise how great it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Titus as well, you've got to say.
Titus, yes. Sleepy Hollow.
Topsy-Turvy.
Topsy-Turvy, definitely.
Run, Lola, Run.
True Crime I've rated very highly.
No.
I don't remember why.
Yeah, that's that wasn't great. He was just too old.
Play Travail, which was the French movie I watched for the intermission. That was pretty darn good. Not Stuart. Dogma I marked really high, 4 stars.
That was you've got to sort of be in the right mood for that movie, but I can understand that. I just didn't like the poop monster.
Any Given Sunday and Bullworth.
Bullworth was okay. Any Given Sunday, it's just not my thing.
I mean,
too much shaky cam as well.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about, but Run Lola Run I thought was a brilliant movie.
Yeah, really good.
That's probably of those sort of movies where things start again. And, like, I don't exactly know how to elucidate this, but I really thought that was a really, really clever movie. I really enjoyed that. German movie.
So anyway, we would normally now cut live to this week's movie night, but instead let me put in this video cassette and see what's on it.
This year, from the team that brought you the movies of 1999, comes a brand new podcast about the world as it was 40 years ago. Starring Jason Hutchins, possibly Craig Talbot, and probably nobody else, as we won't be doing the movie night anymore. Busy Bite Multimedia is proud to present a brand new year of movies. Coming soon, Season 2 of your favorite podcast. Prepare yourself for the movies of
1985.
So what do you think, Craig? Season 2, the movies of 1985.
Oh my goodness.
Because it is 2025, so 1985 is now 40 years ago. So we can celebrate 40-year anniversary of the movies of 1985. So
yes.
But I am not going to do a movie night, and I'm not going to watch a second movie every week. It's just far too time-consuming.
It is quite time-consuming. Well, I've been watching 3 or 4 movies a week, it's been really intense.
I have other projects on the side burner that I'm going to take up this year, but I really enjoyed having the list. I think it goes back to placing a constraint on things, and having a constraint that you have to select 52 movies from 1985 and watch one a week. It's interesting. You sort of have all this serendipity that occurs, and we've seen that throughout this year, that there will be connections between movies that you wouldn't have thought about otherwise. So I think it will be interesting. So anyway.
Yeah, no, it was an interesting project, this, and I've enjoyed doing it. I've certainly discovered some movies and learned a lot more about movies this year than I knew before, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks for coming
really
along for the ride, Craig. We talked about it and we sat down and we did it, and that's
we finished the project. So I'm very proud of that. Well, in total, actually, we've done 54 episodes, haven't we? Because we did the F list at some point.
54 hours, pretty much, of blabbing on about movies.
Been a process, but look, it's been fun doing this every Saturday morning, and we'll see what happens this year.
Well, you will find yourself with time on your hands, and who knows what you'll do with that. But hopefully you've got something up your sleeves.
I have got a few ideas, but whether I get around to doing them or not, isn't it? I do need that discipline of doing something once a week, I think. Yeah.
That's two things, I think. Placing a constraint on things, and also having a regular rhythm, to
do things.
That really helps. So let's go over now to David and Margaret for their review of Being John Malkovich and their farewell to the year of movies. And from me, it's goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Let's start with a cast of oddballs living the part to extremes in Being John Malkovich.
This incredibly fresh, original comedy is the work of a pair of very talented first-timers. Funny concept which gets more intriguing and mind-blowing as it proceeds. Fiercely intelligent in what it has to say about sexual manipulation, power games, pulling the strings of someone else's life. It's the best film I've seen this year. Margaret?
I think Charlie Kaufman was hallucinating when he wrote it. The enthusiasm, the energy, the creativity keeps on rolling on and on and on from itself.
You keep worrying that it's not going to sustain it till the end, but it does sustain it.
Yeah, it's a very clever and original work.
So what will you give it?
I'm giving it 4.5 stars.
Now, this is the tops for me, 5 out of 5. And of course, special thanks to you, our audience, for enjoying movies with us. Good night.
Good night.